hear me okay? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and give you a little bit of background of Hammer Enterprises. Hammer Enterprises, so I'm the Director of Operations and Regulatory Affairs for Hammer Enterprises. I started as the Compliance Officer back in 2017 with Hammer, and as of December 2018, I moved to the Director of Operations and Regulatory Affairs. And we were established in November of 2015. We are the largest vertically integrated ISO 9001 accredited USDA certified organic operation, vertically integrated. That's very important. Sorry, is there some feedback? Yeah. Okay. Is it this? Is that better? Okay. And we are also very active in the regulatory space, and I'll talk more about that later. Should I turn this off?
Let's turn this on too.
Okay. So Hammer Enterprises is a custom white label manufacturer, and we are also an ingredient supplier. We produce all sorts of products from full spectrum oil. Sorry about that. Raw hemp extract, CBD isolate, as well as different types of edibles, topicals, pet products, really anything that you need. We are very committed to our strict quality control guidelines. Sorry, I'm trying not to, I don't know where I should be standing. As well as ethical standards. Based on my background, that would be a huge disappointment if I wasn't bringing forward all of the training and knowledge that I acquired while working for the City and County of Denver. So very quickly, my background, lead foodborne illness and outbreak investigator for the City and County of Denver for 2010 to 2015. I was the first environmental health investigator to conduct any sort of enforcement actions in the cannabis space, which included recalls, product disposals. I was not a very popular person at the health department in terms of operators, but I was doing it for public safety, public health. I participated in conducting cease and desist orders, as well as product recalls and disposals of various cannabis-infused products, as well as having summonses for manufacturers for incomplete recalls, because when you recall a product, you're doing it for consumer safety, and yet if the operator doesn't understand the significance of that and they decide not to do the recall, then we will also pursue operations that do that as well. So my background is actually in microbiology, just so that you understand where I'm coming from, and I also have a PCQI, so any of you who know about FSMA or food safety, PCQI is a preventative controls qualified individual, which is required for FSMA, which is the FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act. Some of the product disposals or enforcement actions that I've conducted, for various different reasons when I was with the City and County of Denver. I was also the outbreak investigator for any sort of marijuana outbreaks that occurred, and they actually used my investigation as a case study to train other public health officials as well. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Colorado Integrated Food Safety Center of Excellence, which is a part of the CDC. And then after that, I went into the cannabis space. So I was the director of infused products for the company that produced Leafs by Snoop. And even after I left the regulatory realm, I worked very closely with regulators, helping move forward with trying to make the industry better and create standards with the industry. So I worked very closely with the fire department, the health department, sheriff's department, police department, all sorts of different types of regulatory agencies, thereby establishing standards for extraction rooms. So let's just get right into it. So that's kind of what my background is. So since the Farm Bill, 2018 Farm Bill, does everybody know how that impacted the industry? What it allowed for is for hemp, an agricultural commodity, which wasn't really seen as that. It was, listed as a controlled substance, not hemp specifically, but CBD, right? If it was a controlled substance, then there was lack of research, There was also limitations on the distribution and the processing and the manufacturing of it. And so with the Farm Bill, what it allowed for was it allowed for other states to produce an industrial hemp program within their state so that we can have and allow for interstate commerce. And why is this important with the Farm Bill? It's important because it opened the doors to legitimize our industry, right? But then what happens when you open the door without any sort of regulatory framework? How do you know where, whether products is being produced legally, if they are following the regulations, if it's following CGMPS or good manufacturing practices? You don't know. And at this point, we're kind of in limbo right now where the USDA has not expressed what their guidelines are for the state programs that want to have hemp programs. What we're doing here in Colorado is we are trying to build out a blueprint of what is required or what we anticipate the USDA to require as a part of the industrial hemp program for the nation. And so in Colorado, and for those of you who aren't from Colorado, we are looked at from across the nation as the experts in all things cannabis, whether it be marijuana or whether it be hemp. And so the last two slides, you can just see that there are cannabis programs almost nationwide, right? These are just hemp programs that are now available as of 2019. I believe this was from August 2019. So what did we do here, not only in Colorado, but as Hammer Enterprises? What we did was we were very proactive. We anticipated what was coming, because anything that is made for the consumer and goes into commerce, there will always be some sort of regulatory agency that oversees it. But at this point, everybody's trying to figure it out. Is it USDA? Is it FDA? Is it, who is it, right? And so it really depends on where you're at. Are we talking about cultivation? Are we talking about finished products? Are we talking about labeling? So is it the FTC? Who is it? And so what we did, full well knowing that the regulations were coming, where we were partnering up with regulatory agencies. And so what I did was extend my olive branch. Actually, I kind of kicked down the door and said, listen, you're going to listen to me. I'm going to train you, because I'm going to be very transparent about not only the industry, but industry practices. And I'm educating regulators on the local, state, and federal level so that they understand not only the process, but what is the public health significance of different processes. If they don't understand that, then there's going to be over-regulation. And that's one thing that you don't want, right? You don't want over-regulation of the industry because of fear. You want fair regulation because they understand. And they're looking at it as a process, not necessarily as the commodity. And so back in 2017 of July, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment decided to implement an industrial hemp policy. And the reason why they created a policy was because sometimes regulations take a long time. You have to have public remarks, and you have to have stakeholder work groups and things like that. And so they created a policy just to give the industry guidelines as to what to follow, how to go about it, so that we can ensure that whatever it is that you're producing is safe for the consumer until they can build the infrastructure that can actually regulate the industry. And in Colorado, we do require that every single manufacturer that produces anything related to hemp, or whether you're a co-packer, whether you're a brand owner, whether you are just storing hemp, you are required to have a manufactured foods license. Why is that significant? They're taking charge and ensuring that these facilities are licensed. They are ensuring that they go in and conduct inspections of these facilities to ensure that they are following good manufacturing practices. They are partnering up with the industry to not only understand how it is that they are producing products, but also ensuring that nothing that is produced using, say, unapproved solvents that are not meant for food, or mislabeling, misbranding, fraudulent claims, all of those things are not going out into commerce, right? I mean, how many people in here, with a show of hands, use CBD or they know someone who uses CBD? Basically everybody in the room. How do you know that your product is safe, that you're consuming? How do you know? And so here in Colorado, the reason why they regulate it as a food ingredient is it still follows good manufacturing practices. There's differences between, say, food versus dietary supplements, right? If you look at it, there are different regulations at the federal level for food and dietary supplements. What it allows for is it allows for Colorado to have the flexibility to regulate the industry, but also not to impact the products that are already out there. And the regulations for food and dietary supplements, not that different, really not that different. And so the reason why Colorado went this route, again, was just to allow for all the different products that were already currently out there. Because if you're infusing it into any type of product that may be a conventional food, then it would be listed as a food, right? Whereas dietary supplements, there's limitations on the different commodities that you can introduce into commerce. So for good manufacturing practices, this slide, this chart is just from FDA's website. And it just tells you what good manufacturing practices are. You conduct hazard analyses. You have preventative controls. There's a risk-based supply chain for your program. And then you have a recall plan. This is all the basis of FSMA, which is Food Safety Modernization Act. And does it have to be specific to the cannabis industry? No, it's specific to any consumer goods that are introduced into commerce. And so if you understand what I'm talking about for hazard analysis, this is how an inspector would come into your operation and how they would investigate. They would look to see what the hazards are. How are you producing this? Are you using, again, I'm going to keep on saying this, food-grade solvents? Is your concentrate made with, let's just say, solvents that may be tainted? I'll show you some photos later, and you guys can just make that decision. But when you're following these practices, this is what you're being inspected against. This is what if there's an investigation, whether it be at the state level or whether it be because you conduct your own investigation because of some deficiencies within your own program, you should be analyzing the hazards within your facility, and you should be very proactive in your approach instead of just assuming that everything is right. This is the basis for our ISO 9001. For those of you who don't know what ISO 9001 is, it's a quality management system. It is an internationally recognized accreditation that goes far beyond just the cannabis industry and far beyond the food manufacturing industries. This is an accreditation that several different types of industries may adopt, and it's from ownership level all the way down to the technician, ensuring that we are monitoring the quality of not only the products that we produce, but also the quality of products that are introduced into commerce, right? And so when you are operating under good manufacturing practices, you have all of your documentation in line, and you have all of the records that are required that you can trace back, then what you're doing is you're building up consumer confidence in your brand, right? For CGMPs, I know that there are a lot of different types of certifications that you can obtain. I know that in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of very industry-specific CGMP certifications, and people asking, well, are you CGMP certified? What does that really mean? Let's talk about that. Certification. If it's a certification, then there's a certifying body. And if there's a certifying body, who is the body that is accrediting that certifying body? So what does CGMP certification actually mean? Are you adopting standards that may be internationally recognized, or is it only cannabis specific, right? And I'm bringing this up because I know that there are, a lot of certifications out there, and the industry is still very young, but when you're being inspected by the state or by the FDA or any sort of regulatory agency, they're looking at good manufacturing practices. That's how you're being inspected. If you are following ISO, so any sort of ISO, whether it be 9001 and or 22000, which is the food safety management system, that is CGMP. If you are pursuing your SQF or NSF or BRC, those are all GMP certifications, and those are not limited to just the cannabis space. These are globally recognized by all sorts of industries. And so you don't want to limit yourself, unless you do, but I want to get as much business as I can, so I want to make sure that any of our clients, whether you be in the cosmeceutical space, nutraceutical space, food space, whatever space it is, I want them to recognize our accreditations, right? And so that's the reason why we will pursue ISO, and we will be pursuing SQF, BRC, and ISO 22000 in the future as well, instead of pursuing smaller CGMP certifications, because again, my first question would be, who's your certifying body, and are you following the ISO requirements for a certifying body? These are questions that you should be asking, because you may be spending thousands and thousands of dollars just to have someone's logo that may not mean anything outside of our space, right? Or even outside of your state. As a part of our quality management system, which is our ISO accreditation, so this is our flow chart of our process, and it tells you, basically from seed to sale. What is it? We cultivate, we harvest, we have different points where we're conducting QA, QC analyses, right? We're doing different types of testing depending upon the different products, and look at all the numerous types of products that we have out there, and we have to have many quality control steps. Every single diamond that you see, whether it be an orange one, which was CDA, which is the Colorado Department of Agriculture, or the blue ones, those are our own internal quality standards that we have, that we test. Do we have to do it? Probably not. A lot of companies don't, because what does that mean when you do quality testing? That's money, right? But look at all those diamonds that you see. At every single point in the process, there is something before it goes out the door. This is just to give you a quick overview if you're not really sure about the difference between marijuana and hemp. Even though I'm speaking very specifically about hemp, you should understand that the regulations are a little bit different between marijuana and hemp. Marijuana is all parts of the plant. Cannabis sativa, whether growing or not, the seeds thereof, the resin extracted from any part of such plant, and every compound, manufactured, salt, derivative, mixture, or preparation of such plant, its seeds and resin. That's how marijuana is defined. And if you look at the photo, everybody recognizes the cola, right? And everybody recognizes the seeds. How is hemp defined? Hemp is defined as a plant of the genus cannabis, and any part of the plant, whether growing or not, containing a delta-9 THC concentration of no more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. And again, there's a photo of a cola from a hemp plant and the seeds. Can anybody tell me the difference between the two? Could you tell just by visually inspecting it? Probably not. They're both female plants, right? The only difference is the THC content, and yet it's being regulated very differently. One commodity is being regulated like a food and potentially drug, and the other one is part of the Controlled Substances Act, right? So we at Hammer, we cultivate everything. We have our own greenhouses. We have over 1,200 acres here in Colorado and eastern Colorado that we've cultivated, over 400 of which are organic certified through USDA. Okay, and you can actually look that up on the National Organics Program website for the Organic Integrity Database. For those of you who hear that terminology, organic, USDA is the regulatory body that regulates that term. And so how many people see organic just listed everywhere? And do you know how to find out whether or not that company is actually organic certified or not? Does anybody know? So you look at USDA's Organic Integrity Database. You can Google, search any company name, and you can find Hammer Enterprises that's listed, and it tells you everything that is listed that is certified organic. Any company that wants to pursue organic certification and use that USDA logo that says organic should have their certification. You should be able to be searched through that. And it's, again, an audit that happens. It's not something that you just purchase. You submit documentation, you show them documentation, and then beyond that, they come in and they audit you. And it's a rigorous audit. It is an 8-hour audit when they come in. And again, it's very similar to GMP certification, right? Because they're looking at how you're producing. They're looking at your ingredients. They're verifying their food grade. They're verifying that you aren't using anything that is not allowed on the NOP list. And they're verifying that you're taking all the control measures to ensure the organic integrity of the product. So again, getting your organic certification, that is another step to help not only build your brand, but those who understand the rigorous process of getting organic certification understands that there are, third-party audits that are conducted to ensure that you're meeting their standards. These are just some photos of our greenhouse, and then we do grow out in the field. Some lovely photos of our isolate. So let's talk about isolate a little bit here. Does everybody know how isolate, CBD isolate, is made? So you'll extract it in one way or another, right? Your primary extraction can be various different types of solvents. Here in Colorado, we only allow for food-grade solvents, but the industry, and when I say the industry, I'm talking about the cannabis industry, sometimes there are other solvents that are used. How many people know about BHO, PHO? Yeah? Obviously, there's ethanol extracted products as well. So BHO is butane hash oil. PHO is propane hash oil, right? So sometimes they'll use hydrocarbons, and it could be propane, butane, hexane, pentane, heptane. That's what's allowed here in Colorado. So which one of those are food grade? The only hydrocarbon that is recognized and approved by FDA for food manufacturing is hexane. So if someone's making isolate, and maybe they're using pentane, are they following FSMA? Are they looking at it as a commodity that's being produced for human consumption? Are they ensuring that whatever ingredient that is being introduced into the supply chain and or your products will meet the standards of products that are meant for human consumption? So every part of the process you have to understand, regardless of whether it's an extract, regardless of whether it is an isolate, care has to be taken to ensure that these are made in such a way that would be fit for human consumption, minus any sort of adulterants, minus any sort of deleterious products or byproducts that may be potentially unsafe. Okay? I always like to show the purity of our isolate, because sometimes you might find some products, and sometimes you might see some products that could be a little bit questionable. So those of you who don't necessarily see CBD often, this is a great example of something how it should look. These are also some of our isolates. On the left side, you will see our CBD isolate that is reinfused with terps, because sometimes people want to have the entourage effect, and you're reintroducing the terpenes back into an isolate. It might not be full spectrum, but it's definitely a product that can be utilized in the space to bring different value to the products that you're producing. So why do we spend so much time and effort in producing products to ensure the safety of it? Because I'm trying to be proactive. Coming from the regulatory space, I know what to look for. Those of you who don't know me, my nickname when I was a regulator was the Black Widow. Didn't give it to myself, my operators gave it to me. And that was because I would come in and I would find every single violation and write them up for it. But it wasn't to write people up for the sake of writing anyone up. It was to make you better, to have an extra set of eyes. And if you have that extra set of eyes, then you can be very proactive in your approach, right? You can make those changes and you can anticipate any sort of deficiencies in your operation. So why is this important? It's important because we are putting a lot of focus and emphasis on compliance. Within our company, we have over 40 years of regulatory experience. I have a compliance team, and we all came from the health department. So what are we doing? We're conducting daily inspections of our operation, daily inspections of every single department to ensure that we are meeting the standards, not only for food safety, but obviously, all sort of regulatory requirements. How many of you have a compliance officer or a compliance department? Awesome. Not everybody has the capability of doing that, right? It's costly. And some people, may feel that, well, I can do it all. And I wish I could say that I could do it all, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of things that I can't do, which is sleep and find enough time. But I have an amazing team that definitely helps with that. Bringing people that are subject matter experts in different fields definitely makes it a lot easier. And so for those of you who don't have the capability of having a compliance team, how do you feel about working with a manufacturer that puts forth the effort and the time and the money that focuses on compliance for you so that we can anticipate issues that may arise? We have internal QA/QC. We conduct second-party audits of our contract manufacturers. We conduct second-party audits of any ingredient suppliers as we are able to. But if we're not, then I have my supplier verification checklist, all the requirements that I need from an ingredient supplier to ensure that it's food safe, to ensure that they're meeting all of our requirements, and then again, to ensure that they will follow the organic certificate or organic programs or requirements so that I can ensure that the products that we are producing are organic as well. We also have an in-house analytical laboratory. How many of you have a laboratory in your company? It's costly, right? But isn't it nice to have where you could just have quick turnaround time? You could ensure that every single product that you're producing is standardized, and we can ensure that there's a certain potency that is being introduced, not only for you, but also into the industry. Do you guys conduct third-party tests of your finished products? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of brand owners in here. Do you send your product out for third-party testing? Everybody should, right? You should be testing for potency. You should be testing for, all sorts of different things. Whether, and again, it depends on the commodity. You might want to ensure that it's free of residual solvents, mycotoxins. You may want to conduct some microbial testing, heavy metals. That's a big thing, right? So for our in-house laboratory, we conduct validation studies. We also participate in proficiency testing. So those of you, again, you might be in the lab space, maybe not, but proficiency testing is something that we aren't required to do, but we do that so that we can see how we compare against all other labs that are also conducting proficiency testing. In Colorado, they are required to participate in proficiency testing to ensure accuracy of results. In addition to that, the laboratories in Colorado in the cannabis space are, in the marijuana space, they do require 17025 accreditation, ISO 17025 accreditation. In the hemp space, it looks like it's getting there, but again, we're still working on it right now. As an in-house laboratory, do we need to have ISO accreditation, our 17025? We're not a third-party laboratory. We just do it in-house to ensure that, again, we are producing products that are exactly consistent with the expected values. So yes, we are working on our ISO accreditation for 17025, and we hope to have that by first quarter of 2020. We also partner with third-party laboratories, and any sort of test that we can't conduct in-house, then we are sending things out for testing. We have subject matter experts in-house for various things, and I devote a lot of my time to the local, state, and federal level. And then in addition, any of you know about the National Environmental Health Association? That's the agency that trains health departments and other health inspectors. And now they have a cannabis technical advisor. I am the cannabis technical advisor for NEHA, so I am the one that's training not only the health inspectors, I'm conducting trainings with FDA, I'm conducting trainings with various states. And all of this knowledge that we have, that I have, I am sharing with regulatory to ensure that they have fair regulation, but also that the industry can help, hopefully, come up to the same standards that we're expecting for all food manufacturers, right? I'm just showing you this slide about just some basic food safety challenges. This is a slide that I oftentimes share with my regulatory partners, and I do that because I want to show them that there's really no difference between what we do and what other food manufacturers do. Maybe the technology is different, maybe some of the solvents are different, but it's really not that different. It could be just basic knowledge, basic food safety knowledge, right? Unapproved source. How do you verify source? Whether or not they're licensed, whether or not they're being regular inspected, right? Which you don't always have in our space. Whether the state has a regulatory program to monitor and to regulate the space. Unapproved pesticides, non-food grade ingredients and solvents. The article that you see in the middle there, it says Left Bank voluntarily recalls marijuana products due to non-food grade ingredients. And that was very specific to the use of essential oils manufactured not for human consumption that were being introduced into the chocolates that were being sold to the public. Now, this is just basic food safety knowledge. If you don't use any sort of ingredients, they're not food safe, because what you're doing is you're opening yourself up to liability. And if you don't understand your process and you don't understand your source and you don't understand the different critical control points of the process, you're opening yourself up to liability and your brand. The photo that you will see on the bottom, which before I talk about that one, I'll just talk about the one on top, only because that's probably one of my favorite photos. It was back in 2014, but before I entered the cannabis space, didn't know a whole lot about cannabis, but apparently these are called roaches. Other types of pests, my favorite thing, because I came from the health department, is I love pests, and I love talking about vomit and diarrhea. So if you see me out, on the floor, come and talk to me, because I would love to talk to you about vomit and diarrhea and pests. But so this photo right here, okay, butane and propane extracted cannabis. So what you'll see on top, if any of you are extractors in the room, are Wattman filter paper that you might find in extractors. You see all of that black gunkiness and that rust. That was filtered through while it was being inspected, while it was being extracted. And so can you imagine having any sort of residue of that product in your oil? How are you testing for it? You wouldn't have to know what to test for. You would have to, identify what the laboratory should be testing for. But a lot of times you're not. You're testing for microbial, you're testing for pesticides, heavy metals, things like that. This is something that happens when, there might be unapproved food grade solvents that are being used to extract your oil. Sure, there's going to be further refinement, but what do you think of that? Not so good, right? What about this? This is a photo of a hemp operation that was shut down. That's how they're storing their hemp. That's how they're storing their CBD. Not really a GMP facility, is it? And then the photo on the top left side is in a bag, and that bag, you can't read it, but it says for dangerous goods. So it's being packed into a tote that was not meant for food. This is important. Do you guys think about that when you're receiving your product? How are they storing? How are they processing? How are they manufacturing? What sort of contaminants are there? There might be some unapproved pesticides that are being used. And if you're not testing for pesticides, do you know whether or not there's going to be any sort of residue in it? I'm going to show you a couple of slides on what we're doing at Hammer. And I pull up these slides very specifically because I want to share what we're doing internally to help not only for traceability within our company, but something that you might want to consider for your operation. SafetyChain, there's a lot of different types of companies that will help you with compliance software. This software is very specific to compliance and traceability. And what does it do? It does data collection, where you start from the source and you can scan all that information. And we have a portal for suppliers and consumers. And it contains all the information that is required for regulatory, non-regulatory, just SOPs, anything. All of it is in one space. And then as far as production, we're capturing a lot of information from the production standpoint. So that's quite useful for us since we are such a large operation and we are vertically integrated. So we're trying to process everything from seed to sale. So when you purchase anything from us, I'm going to kind of push through this a little bit quickly here. When you purchase from us, I can tell you where the plants were planted. If I'm giving you some isolate or you're purchasing some oil from us, I can tell you where at the farm, in which farm it was cultivated. I can trace it all the way back. How many of you can say that? Be good to say, right? Then you can use it as a marketing tool, for, as I am, for your products. That's, again, to build up consumer confidence in your brand. Again, we're very active in the regulatory realm. For those of you who follow this, you were probably also aware of the FDA public hearing regarding cannabis, regarding CBD specifically in Silver Spring, Maryland. Did anybody participate in this room? I remember seeing you there, Greg. So I also presented there in front of the FDA panel, very specifically to request that there be some sort of guidance and regulation, because we want to ensure that anything that's being produced to the consumers are safe, right? From that, and if you guys take a picture of this and just click on that link, or type in that link, or even just find that webinar, I was participating with their senior analyst. This is the FDA senior analyst that was on the FDA panel for that hearing, and we are talking about the differences between the state and local regulation versus the federal perspective. Again, I am trying very hard to work very closely with regulatory so that they understand that we are not that different from any other industry, that there should be regulation, but there should be fair regulation, and to show them that we can still utilize some of the same regulations. Food and dietary supplements may be something combined for our industry, and it's something that I highly encourage you to take a look at that link so that you can better understand the different perspectives. So from the state perspective, local perspective, obviously it's very different. Here in Colorado, we regulate CBD and hemp as a food. In Utah or in Texas or New York, it's going to be something different. It might be dietary supplements. They may require a supplement facts panel. It all depends. Again, just different things that we do. I'm just showing you what we do, but we are a silver partner for the Environmental Leadership Program because we highly encourage green and sustainable operations. Again, very similar to the ISO 14001 or the EMS, Environmental Management System. The CHAMP initiative is what I was discussing earlier, and that's specific to Colorado. You should take a look at that, and again, that is a blueprint that Colorado is producing and trying to partner up. We're trying to partner up with Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, different states, so that we can have reciprocity between states. Because how difficult is it when you're producing product in one state and another state doesn't recognize either your testing or your labels or, people being stopped because of the transport of the products, even though the Farm Bill allows for it now, right? And so we try to have those types of conversations at the local and at the state level so that we can bring it forward to the FDA or federal agencies so that there's a better understanding of not only the industry, but also it's something that is not the Wild West. It's something that can be reined in, that we can produce very safe products to introduce into commerce. How much time do I have? I have a lot of time. Okay. This is just a very short list of some of the expos and conferences and webinars and things that we do at Hammer as a part of our corporate social responsibility program. If you are able to look at this, I know it's kind of small. We really focus on partnering up with different agencies, different state, local, and federal agencies, and invite them to come and train our operation, and conduct regular inspections of our operation, because again, it's all about transparency, right? This is my last slide, but I wanted to really emphasize that in this day and age, when everybody feels as if there isn't enough guidance out there, there is guidance. It's just not specific to the cannabis industry. You have to understand your process. You have to understand controls. You have to understand what sort of regulations may fall under your type of operation very specifically. And that's how you can be proactive in your requirements for whether it be your extraction operation or whether the label requirements that you have for the different products that you have out there. I can't assert enough that compliance is key, even though I've heard even at this expo, a lot of people complain about regulators, but the regulators are what are keeping us safe. And the last thing that we want is for us to have any sort of warning letter from the FDA or be publicized as the company that had a recall because of whatever reason. So how do you go about that? You go about that by being very proactive in your approach. You go about that by making sure that compliance is key and understanding what does that entail dependent upon your operation, by partnering up and sharing knowledge with one another instead of trying to keep it all to ourselves. Because by doing so, we're not helping with the movement. Sorry, how much time do I have? I'm done? Okay. So one last thing that I wanted to say, as I was trying to prepare for this presentation, I was trying to find a quote that was inspirational. And obviously there's a lot of quotes out there, but one thing that I saw, that I read, that really spoke to me was, it said, leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. And so at Hammer, we definitely want to partner up with any sort of companies that want to help, partner up with us to lead the way in the industry, and just, allow for us to help you build your brand, because that is what we do. If any of you are looking for, say an ingredient supplier or obviously any sort of other custom white label products, please come and see us in booth 509. And then we also have our team back there. If you guys want to raise your hands back there, go and take a look at anybody in